So again, I am introducing the Royal Highness Sheikha Intisar AlSabah, Princess Alia Al-Senussi, and the wonderful Maria Sukkar. And we will talk about your what is art. Even though one day I actually asked Alia in a couple of months ago what is art, and today what is philanthropy for you. But please, I will start with Francois.
Of course. And so I will start with Her Royal Highness Intisar. We have had a couple of absolutely beautiful conversations around art and philanthropy. And I was very touched because what Her Highness is working on is not just art in the visual aspect, but also with the Intisar Foundation, helping 1 million Middle Eastern women who have been affected by conflict with drama therapy. And I thought that was such an interesting way to approach conflict, because I've seen various techniques in the United States around PTSD, etc. And I never really thought about drama therapy as something that could be so powerful. And yet in our conversations, Her Highness shared these wonderful stories with us. And then we'll talk about the art aspect afterwards. But Your Highness, if you could kindly speak about this wonderful therapy and how wonderful it's been.
Firstly, such an honor and a pleasure to be joining you. And I'm very flattered to be asked to join and speak about what we do at Intisar Foundation. So basically what we started wanting to achieve when I started the foundation was to psychologically support women, especially in the Arab world that are affected by war and violence. Since unfortunately the Arab world is the hottest region in the world, it's the region with the most conflict, but also the region with the most refugees. So, and it started where, I mean, the whole idea started because I realized me as a victim of war, I was a refugee when Iraq invaded Kuwait, and I didn't suffer a fraction of what the women are suffering. And I know I went through a very hard time until I got different kinds of therapies to get over my trauma of the war and everything that comes with the trauma, which is the violence, the anger, the despondency, the hopelessness, the violence. I think more than anything else, I was more violent and more afraid than I was before the invasion. So all of this combined made me realize that women, especially because the women are the biggest victims of war, but also the women are the least focused on in any humanitarian aid, because it's the children and they put their children first, they put their family first. And so they forget about themselves. But in reality, if you know, it's like on the plane when they tell you, you put the mask on and then you put it on the child. That's how life should be. And so we only focus on women. And we wanted to do a psychological intervention that was acceptable, because a lot of psychological interventions are either with a stigma or have shame attached to it. So we looked at the arts and we started with 2 programs. We looked at everything scientific around art therapy, different art therapies, and there was music therapy or dance therapy, there was art therapy, and there was drama therapy. So we opted out of the music therapy or the dance therapy because there might be an aversion to it. And we ended up doing a program in drama therapy and a program in art therapy. The art therapy was brilliant. The women were doing really well. They were connecting with their emotions and actually drawing their or painting or, you know, clay making their emotions and all their trauma. And we were very happy with it. But when we saw the end result of drama therapy, we realized that's what the women need. They need more than just art, because with art therapy, they were hunched over their artwork, drawing their pain, connecting with their pain, but not engaging with anyone else. And they stayed within that comfort zone that they want. But with drama therapy, they actually have to embody their emotions, but also engage with other people's emotions. They have to go on any kind of stage. The stage could be a little step, but be on stage, be visible, be vocal. And also drama therapy does have a bit of art therapy, and it has a lot of music and dance therapy. And what we saw was phenomenal. It was way beyond what we expected. There was huge shifts in the women. I mean, I can share with you figures and numbers and lot of impact reports, because from day one, we always had a therapist, we always had a researcher in place to gather all the data and make sure that what we're doing is impactful, and it is a very good way to move forward. And since then, we've reached more than, we've only started literally less than 3 years ago. And with the COVID, things have not been so easy. But we worked online, and even online, we had a 60%, what's the word? 60%, or let's say online, we had 60% as effective as offline, which is very high considering most psychological interventions need more physical presence, but it worked well. So we've had, I will share some of the biggest findings we have. And because of that, we have now connected psychological support of women to peace, and to peace building, and to sustainable peace. Because what we've realized, and I'll give you a few examples why we said that, is not only do the women's behavior changes because they reduce their PTSD, they reduce their trauma, they reduce their anxiety, they reduce a lot of negative emotions, and they increase their outlook on life, their hope, their well-being. It increases no matter how bad the situation they're in. And on top of all of that, we found that women stop marrying their daughters off young. They stop taking them out of school young, so they have hope in their daughters. So that's on one side. We found that the women do get economically more self-empowered, so they realize they are able to make money, which they didn't realize a few months before they started doing drama therapy. They've stopped the violence on themselves from their families or their partner, and they've also reduced or stopped or eliminated the violence on their children. So this is one of the biggest for us evidence that it is sustainable peace. And another very strong pointer that the women share with us is they allow their boys to express their emotions. And anyone who has read anything about children, especially boys, being suppressed of expressing their emotions, turn out to be violent. Not all of them, but predominantly they turn out to be violent, and they actually end up in Europe in gangs, and in countries with war, they become soldiers. So this is a big proponent of the peace building that we do. We are a grounds up movement, so we work with the less privileged, but we also work with the middle class who are affected by violence or crisis. And if you need any question, do ask me, because I've got like 3 pages full of information, and that's not what we're here for. We're here to talk about art, but also to talk about how art can bring not only peaceful coexistence, but how art can develop the peace in the world. And that's why Francois and Caroline have asked me to speak. It's because through the drama therapy, which is a form of art, the women have found their voice, they've found their place, and they've found their footing in life. And this is a huge testament to the power and influence of art in our not only daily lives, but also with people who need mental support or mental well-being support. So I hope that covers it. I mean, there's a lot of examples I can give you, but we're not a medical get-together, so I don't want to bore you with that.
And so
But
also,
if you allow me, I'll just share one testimonial, because this is one of my favorite testimonials. So I used to yell at my children a lot when they played, when they jumped around the house or made noises. I have become more patient with them. I realized I was taking away their freedom, their childhood. Now I have a bigger capacity to deal with my children. I am not as irritable. And I just wanted to share that and end what I was going to say.
When you are, the drama therapy, is that the women are writing dramas based on their life experience, or are they reading plays? What actually is the drama therapy?
Thank you for that question. So drama therapy is a science, and it's, I think, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, because I think my iPods are losing battery. So drama therapy basically is a combination of psychology and theater techniques. So they use theater techniques and psychology, and it's a master's degree. So to become a certified drama therapist, it's not a bachelor's, it's actually a master's degree. And you have to have a bachelor's in either psychology or in theater. So it's a combination of both of these to get to a more engaging, interactive, and releasing psychological intervention, as opposed to speaking one-on-one to someone. It's you're sort of doing theater techniques, doing engaging with your emotions. So as in theater techniques, you have to feel your emotions in order to be able to show them to the public, right? And with drama therapy, they do the same. And these women, mind you, have not engaged with their emotions for years because their emotions are too raw. Right. And so what happens is they start realizing that they do have emotions and they can deal and work with their emotions. And I think this is the biggest proponent of why they change, is suddenly they realize they don't have to be numb. They can be angry, but it'll be over. They can be upset, but it'll be, they know how to soothe themselves with all the theater techniques that they get.
Well, they own their emotions. They own them. It's not
exactly. Exactly.
Control it.
Exactly.
So the mother you talked about being less angry with her children, that's a decision. I can let them play. They have to have their freedom.
Exactly.
They'll make noise. I have to live with them.
Exactly. I mean, there are breathing. I mean, it's everything to do with theater techniques and psychology. So there's breathing, there's embodying the emotions of the audience. There is, I mean, there's lots of exercise they do, taking on the role of someone else. So playing a role of, you know, like they role play and role reverse play. And so it's really interesting what happens. It's theater-based techniques with a certified psychology professional.
Wow.
Yeah, it's very interesting. You have, I'm sure there are drama therapy workshops around the world. In the Arab world, there are not many because there's not a lot of drama therapists, and it's a new technique to the Arab world. I mean, there's not a lot of drama therapists. That's why we've partnered with a university in Lebanon to have drama therapists. So.
And how many women have participated?
So far, because we do long-term, so we do 16 weeks of full training, and then we support them for a year. Yeah, you know, these are women that are traumatized. You can't put a Band-Aid and expect them to, oh, we're chirpy, we're happy. So we, you know, from watching them myself, and I'm not a specialist, but when you see the women every week, you get to realize when the breaking point is and when they sort of start going to the other side. And it's when they're the most vulnerable. And the most vulnerable comes when they allow the vulnerability to happen. And it's at week between 7 to 8. And after that, they start flourishing. But the first 7 to 8 weeks, it's just dealing with all the emotions, the trauma, everything inside. It's almost like they're allowing the release. And then after the 8th week, that's when they actually start really sort of purging. And then we support them for a year. So far we have close to 400 women. and our goal is 1 million. So what we're looking at is how to scale the work we do, because drama therapy, to become a drama therapist, as I said, it's 4 years of bachelor's and then a year or two, depends where you're doing your master's of drama therapy in Lebanon. So where we're collaborating takes 2 years, and then they have to get certified. So it's quite a long process. So what we're looking at now is keeping the drama therapy for the severely traumatized women, because we work only in groups. So we have a magic number between 15 to 20 women. More than that, it's too many. Less than that, it's too little. So from observing the women, taking their feedback, they are our customers. So we're always engaging them and seeing where we can improve what we do, and especially because what we do is for them. What we're looking at now is scaling through expanding theater techniques under the supervision and with a very proper training in theater techniques to bring peace. So again, no one uses women to bring peace. We work with women to bring peace, and now we're going to be using theater techniques, which is more broad and more available than drama therapy. But anyone who will be giving the theater techniques will be giving it to the less traumatized, but also will be supervised and will have a training manual that is done by the top drama therapists in the world.
So can I ask another question, which is the most difficult one? How do you pay for it all?
Well, there is quite a few ways. Number one, I supported it from the beginning.
Yes, but you know,
that's number one. No, hold on. No, I haven't finished.
400 women is one.
I haven't finished.
Oh,
I haven't finished. So I supported. You see, I can't go and get funding if I haven't proved that what we do works.
Right.
Okay. So in the beginning, I did all the funding because we need to measure the impact and the validity of what we're doing. And so far, we've published 2 researches and I think 4 reports within 2 years, which is a huge amount of work. And we're actually now working on a very interesting research, which is the neuroplasticity of the brain and drama therapy. And we also want to measure the different biomarkers in the body before, during, and after drama therapy to prove that drama therapy does change everything psychologically as well as physically and in the brain. So that's what we're doing. And I've started a jewelry brand that 50% of the proceeds go to the foundation. So that is for sustainability. We also do crowdfunding. We're also collaborating, inshallah, within a very short time with the UNDP on a big program to support lots of women. We are getting a lot of support across many organizations, because the work we do is so different and we can prove it works. And with the help of Francois and Carolina, we'll be working on an amazing fundraising events using art.
Yes, to that point.
I would like to help if I can in any way.
Absolutely.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
Well, I have to tell you a personal story. My mother is a Holocaust survivor.
Oh,
and
gosh.
I spent my youth, we grew up in New York. She woke up every night screaming. She'd never, she spent 2 years hiding in the woods, hiding from the Nazis. Her parents had been arrested in front of her by the Gestapo. She was traumatized by that, really never, I mean, both parents suffered post-traumatic stress syndrome. And I know that over time, they mellowed because of age and also because of talking to us and talking it out. It changed her and she finally was able to calm down. But the first 20 years of her life in America were very difficult. And I think that had she had the support, the kind of support you're talking about. Now, the other interesting factor is that as the firstborn son, I was raised with a certain amount of anxiety. And it wasn't until I went into therapy many years ago that I got over survivor's guilt, which is what she suffered from.
Yeah.
And so all of this, I can just imagine in a situation where your neighborhood is bombed or they're terrorists or all of it. I mean, you're trying to protect your family. So this is something that really hits home. And if you can create peace out of this,
Yeah.
it's enormous, just absolutely
Thank
enormous.
you. Thank you.
Thank you.
We are proving that it does build peace. Otherwise, the UNDP would not be speaking to us. And the reason I say we are proving is we have the research to document it. I mean, and we're piggybacking on other research. And as for your mother, you know, when the Beirut port blast happened, we immediately offered psychological support, but we didn't use drama therapy in the beginning because they were too traumatized for drama therapy. So we used, let's say, an unlocking treatment which was EMDR, eye movement desensitizing, EMDR something. And after that, we gave them drama therapy. It was phenomenal. And we worked with business women. Phenomenal how they went from broken and they couldn't work no matter what degree, how much money they had, to realizing they have the potential to grow. So yeah, my heart goes to your parents, and no one has to live with traumatic images or traumatic thoughts for any number of days, yet alone years. So thank you for sharing your story.
Oh, thank you. No, I think what you're doing is extraordinary. I mean, it is to be traumatized in a war. I can't imagine. I can tell you that I was living in Seattle in 9/11, and my parents were in Florida, and you weren't able to really reach anybody. Because,
I'm so sorry. Princess Alia is going to have to leave. So,
sorry.
So never mind, I will come back because I think what you're saying is absolutely wonderful, and this is what we wanted. So I would like to give the word to Carolina, who did a wonderful interview of Princess Alia. Carolina.
Hi, everyone. I mean, I actually think it'd be fun to really kind of bring this full circle, and I do think that the topics related to mental health at the moment are so important. And Mr. Klein, I was actually at university during 9/11 and in Providence, Rhode Island. And I remember that moment well. And as somebody who's been very lucky, who hasn't lived through trauma, although my family did, you know, being Libyan, you know, lived through great trauma, and it actually affected everything. It affected our whole lives, you know.
It can't help but, I mean, it's extraordinary, the depth it goes into, and fear and scare and you know, and then you're not able to work or think or feel.
And I mean, I remember, you know, and I think, you know, for me, one of the most powerful moments of COVID was I was asked to do a talk with the Association of Women in the Arts in London, OWITA. And it was about this subject, and it was about, like, how do you get through this? Like, what are you doing? And, you know, I don't have my own foundation, but I work with several major arts organizations professionally and philanthropically. And what I have seen for my own life, and Maria knows me well, and Carolina knows me well, of course, and Francois, that, you know, my work is also very personal. It's kind of just being there for a large group of friends and for my community. And it's been, you know, now that the world is restarting, you are almost seeing the ramifications of the last 18 months more, with people being so nervous about restarting their lives. And even myself, you know, I kind of had like a major anxiety attack this morning, you know, and it's like you start panicking about everything, you know, and things, you know.
I haven't been on an airplane in 3 years.
Yeah, you know, and it's like you just start panicking about every small thing and about everything that's like absolutely ridiculous. And it's, you know, it's a cause of the moment, and it's a cause, you know, perhaps just like, you know, the life we're leading. You know, yesterday, I mean, Sheikha Intisar was just talking about the Beirut blast. I saw a friend yesterday who's an artist who was in Beirut during the blast, and she was at a cafe, and she's a woman in her late 40s. And she said, many people in the cafe died or were severely injured, but because they were much younger. So their first instinct was to run to the windows or to run, and look at the blast. Her first instinct, because she lived through the Civil War, was to duck and cover. Right. So it's a completely different frame of reference and frame of mind. She then sent, her children had just left the cafe. They were, fine, alhamdulillah, thank goodness. But yet she spent like the next several months just crying every day. And she's somebody who's always been this incredibly positive, really, and kind of always knew that she, was really privileged in the sense that, she had a career and her family was always fine and she had gotten through the Civil War. So Madi, of course, can talk a lot more about Lebanon because I know she has been, much more deeply affected and also works so much more there. But I do think that in terms of my own work and work with institutions, has been finding a way to create safe spaces in conversations, but also in terms of the work that we show and are able to introduce people to. So at the Tate, for example, the fact that we have Middle Eastern art, and I will always remember going at the kind of the new rehang, let's say we call it in the Tate Modern, when they finally kind of integrated the new acquisitions of the regional acquisitions committees into the collection. So instead of, kind of having walked into a historical museum that's like the Met, where you have here's the Middle Eastern room, or here's the Islamic galleries, here's the Asian room. At the Tate Modern, you walk in and it's rooms, based on theme or based on sometimes, on chronology, but mostly on theme. And there was a room about war and trauma. And you have a work about the Holocaust and about the pogroms next, one next to a work about Sabra and Shatila. And you're putting trauma in context. And, somebody who has lived through any one of those major events or has lived through their own trauma, to see that their traumas are also collective traumas. It's not like you're just living them by yourself in a bubble in wherever part of the world that you are, but you are living it in the context of, world trauma. And then also speaking to what Sheikha and Intisar said about the Gulf War, I asked my best friend, who a Saudi man who's in his now early 40s, we're talking about the most traumatic experiences we've lived through in your childhood. And, I would say maybe I wasn't a child, but 9/11, obviously would be that thing. And I would think that would be that thing for almost any Middle Easterner too, because, it was obviously life-changing, and he had been at university in the US at the time. But he said, no, it was the Gulf War, because, and we don't think about that, or I don't think about that as somebody who grew up in America or in the European context, because the Gulf War was this war that just seemed like some missiles that were being traded back and forth to military bases, that it didn't really affect people. It was just armies and a dictator versus a president. It didn't seem that it was really a personal or a community experience. But for him, living in Saudi Arabia, having been displaced, and family on the eastern province who were, extremely displaced, from that, you then realize other people have such different kind of traumas in their lives and contexts. And I think, art really does play that role in being able to say, whether or not it's a person making art. And so I sit on the board of the Elisa Sednawi Foundation. And as you were talking, Intisar, I messaged my friend Elisa and I said, you have to meet the two of you, because she works with children and actually doing similar to drama therapy, and actually training teachers in communities. So, one story that I love to tell in this context, I don't think I've ever told Carolina and Francois, but I was, so I sit on Elisa's board, and, all these things always seem very far away until you experience them firsthand. Of course, I've been a huge fan of what she does, but, it's very ephemeral until you actually perform it and do it. So, I was in Egypt, and I had just taken my mother back for her first trip back to Egypt in 30 some years. My mother's American, but has a deep connection to Egypt. And that's where, she met my father, and that's how I grew up there with my father's family. So also in a household very, very much, touched by what was happening in Libya and the Middle East at the time. So I take my mother back. We're in Luxor, and I go visit Elisa, because Elisa's from Luxor, and visit her. It's her very first center that she had built. So it's next to the Valley of the Kings. So we're in this taxi, and we find that cab driver will say, okay, we'll pay you for a couple of hours, take us across the bridge. And it's like a very long trip. It's like a half an hour, 40-minute trip. So, dusty roads, dusty cab, go there. And the cab driver, of course, speaks no English. My Arabic is decent, but not fluent, but, can get along. So he's like, and then as we get there, and you can just see this man, he was like, where are you? Like, you're two tourists and you're going to this little, like center next to the valley. Like, what are you doing? And I explained to him, it's a school. The best way I could explain it would be a school, et cetera. And so he's sitting outside, and we go inside, and we realized that they were going to do a workshop with us, with my mother and I, and their local, their team members, and whoever had shown up that day to do their workshops. The cab driver comes in, and he asks to use the restroom. And of course they say, please, come use the restroom. Then they say, would you, and then the teacher there out of the blue says, would you like to join us? And he says, me, like, I join you. They say, yes, of course, join us. Right. So he comes and joins them, and it's for a therapy, like really, kind of a therapy teaching session where you're asked to draw a picture. What was your favorite place, growing up? You're asked to draw your family weekend. And then and so he was like getting really into it. And he's, a man in his 30s. You can tell he's quite religious. And then they ask us all to write what, I think it was what our favorite person's qualities were. And he all of a sudden got very nervous and was like, oh, I need to go outside. I need to go, call my wife. We then realized it was because he was illiterate. And so then I didn't really quite understand what was going on, but then the woman who was one of his teachers was, oh, we'll go get him. And my mother realized, because my mother had been more used to this because she had been living in Egypt, in the kind of 80s for a much longer time. So we wrapped up the exercise really quickly, and they went out and got him back. And they just made it so natural and so normal. And there was not one, iota of judgment, nor was there a minute of like, oh, we don't worry, we know you're illiterate, but no, it was just like, oh, you finished your phone call? Oh, why don't you come back? We're going to do a drawing exercise. So, I think these moments and these things, they're all small stories, and they're all, small groups, but I think unbelievably important. And that to me was one of the most powerful moments. I mean, you got choked up and like thinking of that. And of somebody, who was so, and this is going to change his life. He's like, oh, I want to bring my daughters back here. I want to bring, and just to have that freedom of expression when you don't really think about, oh, let me draw something, let me do something, I think is incredibly important.
Alia, I should add, because as Francois said, we had a wonderful interview, more a talk. Let's say a talk about also your, as I said, I introduced this question, how I can define art. For me, your reply was wonderful. So, which is you are fascinated by the artist reinterpretation to bring their culture and identity. And I think this is what you do. It's extraordinary. Even in your little, as you say, that you don't do as much as Sheikha Intisar, but I think is to bring relief to extraordinary communities. Is, you said, I am paraphrasing, the bedrock of our society, because at this point in our life, this is what we need to do. This strong community feeling. Mm-hmm. Also unifying so many cultures.
People feel, I think, so alone, especially at this moment, and creating these communities through art and culture, and just seeing this artist yesterday who was having this kind of traumatic moment and had kind of come through it, feeling a sense that we were in this together, we can share and we can live that. And I think artists and culture and the people who create and who also share their creations with us, it's absolutely the only way forward and the only way to heal. and to kind of be able to thrive.
And your next project, so we met you wonderfully in Basel, very, very the first glimpse of coming back after COVID normality, and also in London. And you are in your next wonderful project about Riyadh.
Yes, exactly. So, I mean, that is also, you know, a real moment of coming together. And it's, I mean, Art Basel felt so great to be a part of the community. And then, of course, we had Freeze, and now I'm here at FIAC. And so it's like the kind of this crescendo and this forward movement of the community coming together. Of course, people love to complain about, you know, the art world and socializing in art fairs, but it is about creating a community, and it's about supporting the artists. And so what I'm, you know, extremely excited for next is to be in Riyadh in December for the Diriyah Biennale. And we have Philip Tenari, who, you know, actually, you know, kind of stuck in Beijing for a long time right now, but is coming out and will end up having to do his quarantine going back there for this. But of course, it's all worth it. Who will be our curator, and about speaking directly to, you know, local artists and local culture, and bringing local culture and international culture together from Saudi and the world. So it's an incredibly important moment because Saudi is going through massive change and through a really colossal reawakening in a way, and something I think, you know, my friends are so happy about. And I look and see my kind of, you know, friends with their small children, and they never thought that they were going to live this life that was so much more open, and be able to like show their children, you know, kind of a Saudi that was extremely modern in that way. So it's going to be very exciting. So it's December for 3 months, and, you know, really be able to kind of help the local artists and their infrastructure also.
That there are amazing artists that we already met, a couple of them, but as I said, we can't wait to be there with you. And I'll pass it to Francois and to Maria. Maria, I can't see you on my screen, unfortunately.
Oh, no, Maria's here.
And you need to, I know that you are, Jackie, you were amazing to be with us today. I know you're in between.
I'm going to turn my camera off, but I'm going to be listening and then jumping in when needed.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Maria, we saw very briefly in London in passing, and we were just talking how we had, when we did one of our artist dinners, we had an amazing conversation around actually not necessarily philanthropy, but how art affects boundaries. And so I would love to just pick up to where Alia left off, and as to your experience with the Middle Eastern region, with the Arab world, and what you are doing today in the philanthropy world.
Bonsoir to Francois and Carolina, and thank you for allowing me to share this platform with two other amazing ladies, Sheikha Intisar and Alia, a dear old friend. Allow me to introduce myself very quickly before we start. So my name is Maria Sukkar. I'm Lebanese and I'm based in London. I lived most of my adult life in Beirut, and then I moved to London about 17, 18 years ago. I still carry Lebanon in my heart, and it's honestly my source of inspiration for my day-to-day involvement and doing in the art world. And I've also realized after listening to Sheikha Intisar and Alia that we all sort of cross somewhere and share our deep-rootedness in the Middle East. And we've also, all three of us have probably witnessed the turbulence and agitation of a certain moment of violence in our countries of origin, which deeply affects any individual who comes from these regions. And I'm not going to dwell on that because this is not the subject of today's talk. The subject of today's talk is philanthropy, or Phil-ART-thropy, as you so eloquently put it. And the work that I do crosses over with Alia's work. It's very remotely probably connected to Sheikha Intisar, who was a source of inspiration actually today, and I'll say why later. The work that I do is through my involvement in several institutions. I try to bridge the gap between the Middle East and the West. So, for example, in my work as a co-chair of the Middle Eastern and North Africa Acquisitions Committee at the Tate Museum, we facilitate the buying of artwork from the Middle East and the display of these works at the Tate. The committee represents 22 countries from the Middle East, in addition to Turkey and Iran. I'm also a founding member of the same type of committee at the British Museum, and we do the same type of work, maybe different caliber of works, but almost the same. I also try to support artists who want to be represented abroad. So if there's a Biennale and the Lebanese Pavilion is preparing an artist to come and present his project, I, with another group of wonderful supporters, stand united in pushing this artist forward and helping him. There are other ways also of supporting artists that come from the Middle East. So for example, when 2 years ago, the uprising started in Beirut because the Lebanese people were not happy with the government, they took to the streets. And the only way to voice their frustration, sadness, rebellion was to produce artwork. And their only way to show this artwork was through Instagram, because social media, whether we like it or not, has democratized artwork presentation. So you don't need an art gallery, you don't need an agent. You just go on Instagram and you show your work. So as Alia said, art becomes a safe space to express yourself. And I felt that I could be maybe an ambassador to people in my country who would love to express their feelings, and I could connect them to a wider audience in the West. So art not only became a way of connecting people and expressing their feelings, because as we all know, art is the earliest form of expression. And then it extended to art. By art, I mean drawing and sculpture. And then it became more about drama and music and theater and dance and so on and so forth. And then in my humble opinion, I also think that more and more we see that art is a healer. And this is where the work of Sheikha Intisar comes in. I have been privileged very recently. I had the privilege to be invited to I'm not going to name the hospital because it's a work in progress. A major hospital in London is creating an art therapy unit because adolescents with mental health issues are usually admitted to an adult ward and they're seen by a regular psychiatrist. And then they're either dismissed or prescribed drugs. And then the story ends there. Whereas these people are so fragile emotionally and mentally, they need proper care and love and support. So that hospital is in the process of creating this unit in the hope of rolling out this model onto the whole country. And I believe that if this works, it will be phenomenal in terms of dealing with those mental issues that children and young adolescents suffer from.
Project, yes.
So I could go on and on about my work as a patron and how I support the work of artists and I support organizations. But I do believe that post-pandemic, it has become evident to me that my role as a patron is to serve the community of artists, the community of young adults who need to be connected with art in order to heal. And if I can do that, then I do believe that my mission is complete. There's a lot of work to be done. but I feel that it's the duty of any art patron at the moment.
And picking up on what you're saying, Maria, which is, you know, of course, very, very touching, very, very true. But I think we've reached a point in humanity, and which we thought we had all reached with the pandemic, which we really haven't, which is, as human, we all need to support each other. I think it has to go beyond just in a role and supporting art. And I think this is what we're missing in general, is people are not making those connections on how, yes, as an individual, you cannot change the world, but by changing your micro ecosystem, you can then spread it across and create those relationships. But the fact that we have these three amazing women tonight who are actually making it their life mission to help is what I find to be so beautiful. And I think this goes beyond art as an inspiration. It's a human inspiration, aspiration, elevation, as I put it in the post yesterday. And so, wow, just it is difficult not to be in awe of the work that you guys do.
Yeah, and I also need to say that art is a beautiful medium, and one is very lucky to be part of any process, whether it's the creation, the appreciation, or just sitting in front of a beautiful painting. Just look at the reaction an artwork elicits in a person. I have recently seen a visually impaired person touch a sculpture, and it was a goosebumps moment. So yeah, it's a cliche to say that art brings people together. It's a universal form of communication. It connects, but it is, and it's very needed in this day and age where it will probably be the only way to connect people. Yeah.
And so to that point, we have Oliver Wayans with us tonight from Together Bands. And I think in a world of social media, where a lot of brands are using social media to their advantage, etc., it's wonderful to see corporations actually come together, no pun intended, in Together Bands, to actually make use of the audience that they have to help the world and use their status as, let's call it influencers, for lack of a better word, to actually promote a very positive message. Oliver, could you share with us a little more about what Together Band does?
Sure, I'd be delighted to. Thanks for inviting me to speak, and actually, fascinating to hear the previous speakers. Actually, a really interesting collection. And I'm co-founder actually of the core company is called Bottle Top. We're effectively a social enterprise that's been working in fashion and design and art for near on 20 years now. Using the sustainability is really our core and social impact at the time. Particularly at the beginning when we first started, in which sustainability and fashion and or design or art were combinations that seldom went together. So it's been reassuring to see how the world's starting to change. I'd like to think probably not quite at the pace we need it to, but certainly making steps in the right direction towards where we need to get to now. I think probably similar to some of the previous speakers, I think you were introduced to what we do at Art Basel, in which we were showcasing a new campaign that we'd put together. So for everyone's benefit, Together Band is effectively a campaign which is it's a collaboration with the United Nations to really help spread awareness and engagement around the Sustainable Development Goals. I'm sure many of you know what they are. For those of you who don't, there's effectively a framework which has been put in place by the United Nations in 2015 that we all need to try to adhere to effectively prevent further degradation of the planet and to maintain social harmony. And so it's been divided into 17 different areas, from no poverty to life below water. Critical areas that we need to address to make sure that the planet is maintained in the way that we know it. So this was very much a culture-driven campaign, and the core the core product is a bracelet, actually a together band made of recycled ocean plastic, and actually the clasp made from illegal firearms which have been confiscated from gangs in South America, and then melted down into a clasp as a kind of a clasp of peace. And yeah, so the goals of the bands have been color coded in the colors of these goals, and people can wear them and talk about what the goals mean and what we need to do and what the goals mean to them, you know, personally. And we've been lucky enough to have had a great set of ambassadors, from everyone from David Beckham to Naomi Campbell to Lewis Hamilton, and you generated, I think, 8 billion impressions so far across the social media sphere, which has been fantastic, and you know, really pleased to see the traction that it's been getting. But interestingly, from an art perspective, which I think is probably will resonate most strongly with this group, I started looking at the sort of the bigger picture around what we needed to do in terms of climate. And there's one goal in particular which was really interesting for me, particularly running into this pertinent point, the COP talks which are happening at the beginning of November in Glasgow, and that is goal 7, which is affordable and clean energy. Now, energy is more or less responsible for 3/4 of the world's greenhouse gas emissions. So if we can get this part right, then we're going to give ourselves the best chance of you know, reducing the possibility of going above 1.5 degrees for the world climate, which is where I think most, if not all, scientists are in agreement now that to get beyond that, we're going to start to find serious problems. So I thought, well, what can we do to be able to help people to understand what we need to do to address the issues around energy? And I thought actually a mass art campaign would be the clearest and most effective way to engage people directly. And so I developed a campaign called Clean Power. Very sort of simple messaging, which is effectively helping to accelerate the investment into renewable energy, giving individuals and businesses really easy solutions as to what they can do with their current carbon footprint, how it can be improved. And most recently, actually, we're even putting together a platform for us to actually effectively crowdfund a new wind farm off the coast of Scotland. So we're creating new energy directly off the back of this campaign. I commissioned an artist called Morag Myerscough, who's a British graphic artist known for big outdoor installations, very bold, positive, inspiring graphics, and she's been an absolute dream to work with. And we're now finding ourselves with having created real traction. You know, we're creating mass art campaigns across, to begin with, Glasgow. We're launching next week in along the canal, the Forth and Clyde Canal, which goes through the centre of the city. We're wrapping the part of the main railway bridge, which where all of the kind of the artery of Glasgow, all the trains are coming into, again with this big, bold, bright graphics. And then even sort of touring it right across the country, and then even getting to Regent Street. So we'll be having 100 supersized flags made from recycled ocean plastic running from Oxford Circus to Piccadilly Circus, again helping people to drive towards clean power and creating a LinkedIn microsite, which is just cleanpower.eco, in which you can buy a bit of a wind farm, learn what the transition needs to be done towards electric vehicles, find really easy solutions for us to have a tangible impact on the overall energy mix. And, you know, I think we're at a stage in which, you know, art for art's sake, in many cases, the time is so critical now that we need art to inspire action. You know, we need art to inspire change. And I think when you get to the essence of how and why art is created, I think this is it's a perfect medium to help engage and inspire people towards this movement. So I feel, you know, really inspired and grateful to have been given the opportunity to be able to showcase this campaign and to talk to you all about it. And hopefully soon we'll be able to spread this far and wide beyond the UK. I think we've now got offers in America and hopefully across Europe. So it will be something that you all will be able to connect with in some form or another.
Thank you so
Oliver,
much.
could you please share in the chat section the link to the campaign, please?
Absolutely. Yeah, no problem.
Thank you.
It's wonderful. Thank you so much.
No
And
problem.
I'm going to put give the word back to Carolina, who is going to introduce Lucia and Kitty Fernandez. And their story is very touching because it shows that art is not just an inspiration that has to reach a lot of people, but it can change somebody's life. And in certain cases, and this is what gets really beautiful, and to quote Maria's sentence of goosebump moments, when art is the only way someone has to express themselves, in that situation, it becomes that language that we all talk about. Carolina?
Thank you, Francois. Yes, this is a story, a touching story that I think we see and we hear every day that is not being told. And yes, it's a mother story. We can say art talk story. Kitty, hello, how are you?
Hello, Carolina.
How-
Thank you.
So-
Thank you. Good afternoon. I am honored to be with you with such an important audience. Her Royal Highness. Well, thank you, Carolina, Francois, and Carlos, Lucia. I'm here with you. And I want to introduce myself. I am a Latin American mother of an autistic son who has managed to connect with our world through his paintings.
When I heard the story from a dear friend of ours, Carlo, again, it's very touching, because you see, only when you are a mother, first of all, a woman, as Royal Highness said, you know, and then you have also children, and you understand how incredible art can be, and can be a tool to express yourself. But in your case, it's all what you see and what you have from your wonderful son. Can you tell us a bit, if you can share some moments about your challenges and beauties at the same time?
Okay. Also, we have been fortunate that we had a North American therapist for guide us with his early stimulation. Is quite a challenge in South America. Sometimes I think we are in independent cinema film because we have low budget and we have to improvise. There is no script for artists here and nowhere. Also in North America, we don't have that script. And but perhaps with my experience, can I help someone to raise awareness about this condition and put aside the tragic side of things, of autism, and like they say before, is the way that we can communicate with the paintings, with art.
It is touching. Now I feel the goosebump, as Maria Sukkar says, because you know it's only it's beautiful. I've seen some what your son has created, and it's incredible. And also, you know, you think you know your children, for all of us, and then again you don't know them exactly what is the core, and especially when you can't express himself in other means. And through art you can really see everything, if I may say so. And I think it's very important. We wanted, you know, to share this important story because it's our everyday story. As Francois said, it's everyday story that makes the beauty of humanity and of our art community. So thank you for, you know, for all being such a wonderful and inspiring mother, and we can't wait to see one day your son's works of art.
And to show his work, because his work is absolutely beautiful, and it's inspiring, and it's just, you know, we saw it, and when Karina showed it to me, I was like, oh, this is really good work. And then she told me the story around it, and what kind of struck me, and I hope it doesn't come across wrong, is we go to all these art fairs, and I was actually struck by the fact that there were so little artists being shown who were challenged. And then I kind of wondered why. Does anybody have an answer to that, as to why do we view somebody's challenge before we view their talent? And it struck me even more in this case because I saw it before I knew the story. I just happened to be, you know, talking to Karina, and she showed it to me, and oh my God, this is great. I love it. And then she told me the story, and it just triggered this whole conversation we had between us. And why do we not? Why are we unable to separate a challenge from a work of art?
Well, to this point, Francois, we have Akan. Elvira, if you can speak, Akan, if you're there and I can see you, if you unmute yourself, because Akan is doing an amazing. He was introduced to us last week through a dear friend that is an artist, Farah Said. And so, Akan, you're in London. You are located in London.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks, Carolina, and it's really a pleasure to join this conversation, and I benefit a lot. Yeah, thanks. I am in Waterloo. I'm based in Waterloo. I'm at our Dialogue Hub. Let me give you a brief information what we are doing. I am a social entrepreneur. We've got a social enterprise called Muse Projects. It's a community interest company. We set up this company to generate measurable social impact by doing business differently for forward-thinking, inclusive society. So actually, we highly believe in the power of arts, culture, in a wider societal and economic development. We aim at leveraging investment capital to increase the impact of arts and culture. For instance, we are actually now in a idle space. It's called Meanwhile space. We are good at attracting investors to receive these idle spaces to create social impact. In return, we measure our social impact and prepare social impact report that we, created. Because the thing is, actually, we measure not only social impact but also social value in order to get a better understanding of how we deliver impact through inclusion and diversity. For instance, now we've been here in this building for 2 months, and we trained and employed 6 deaf and hearing impaired people as barista. And we again trained and employed 6 partially sighted or blind people as tour guides. And we dedicated this exhibition area, maybe you can see, for artists coming from different backgrounds. Because, I realized that there are lots of artists who cannot find affordable art spaces to work in and exhibit their artworks. So in brief, we created this space. We call it Dialogue Hub. And we receive really good feedback from visitors, from stakeholders. Now we are collaborating with Lambeth Council. The key issue is there are lots of meanwhile spaces in London, unused spaces, and we step in this that kind of spaces, and we create social impact, and we deliver this social impact, social awareness, and employment opportunity. Actually, this is really important, I think, because those people were staying at home. They didn't have any social life. They didn't have any, let's say, business and job. So we created not only a job opportunity, but let's say a life. I think that's how we motivate ourselves. Thanks.
Thank you, Akan. This is a bit what to answer to Francois' question, but it's true. You know, we don't see. I've been through my art talks. I've been listening to so many stories. We will have another artist from Italy who has done the first book for blind people, but he's not here with us today. But to what Maria was saying, when he sent this book to this to the blind association, they said we need to see it first, and then we will let you know what we think. And it's incredible, you know, the people that can't see and saying we need to feel it, we need to see its feeling, and it's beautiful. Anyway, thank you, Akan, for all your for all your effort, a little but fantastic effort in English. And I'm not sure if we have Lee. Yes.
We do?
Yes.
Yes, we do, yeah.
Lee.
Hello, hi. Apologies, I've been having some internet trouble. I think I'm here now.
Don't worry, Lee. I just wanted to introduce you. We met last week, and about your wonderful, again, on children, like Maria was saying, and about how important it is to take care of. You have a foundation, the 16 Foundation.
Yeah, thank you, and nice. It's been really wonderful and inspiring listening to everyone. So thank you to everyone, and thanks again, Carolina, for giving me a minute. I'll be brief because I know that everyone's been talking a lot. So I work with, I founded a charity called the 16 Trust, which is based in the UK, and we're starting to branch out a little bit. So we've got a couple of projects in Europe and the States now as well. But essentially the idea behind the 16 was to give access to people from diverse backgrounds to careers within the arts. So we basically target young people between the ages of 11 and 16, hence the name, in deprived areas to kind of give them access to the arts, and to basically we work through mentoring programs. So we've got people across theatre, architecture, art law, all sorts of kind of different arts related backgrounds, who go in and work with these young people. And some of these young people, they're in incredibly kind of vulnerable backgrounds and very vulnerable situations, where the reason that we kind of aim for them before the age of 16 is because we have the GCSEs in the UK, and there is a problem within areas where when kids fail their GCSEs, they don't get the grades they want, they kind of disappear out of the system. So it's very difficult to support them after that, and end up finding themselves in the same cycles of a lack of opportunities and employment as their parents, and because you end up with this kind of generational problem then. So basically what we kind of identified really was that, you know, the arts are, you know, lacking a range of voices. It is quite difficult to get into the arts, and I think what we hope to do is inspire young people to kind of to feel that their voice is relevant and to feel that they can contribute. So as I say, we do that through mentoring, but we also we have VOMO, which is the world's first completely virtual art museum, and I'm going to drop a link into the thing now, VOMO.space. So that is a completely virtual art museum, which is accessible to everyone through a browser. So alongside that, we have a whole program, like a museum program of exhibitions and talks and everything that can be accessed by anyone, and in fact has been accessed by people from 65 different countries. So we've had something a few 100,000 visitors so far. We launched nearly a year ago now. So that gives us some really great opportunities for outreach. And into that, we're building an exhibitions education program where basically we work with curators from all over the world. So we've got people from New York, Hong Kong, Europe, you know, everywhere, big museums and organizations to basically mentor young people into, you know, how on earth you put an exhibition together. It's not just magic, you know, it does actually work, and there are actually jobs available. So we've got a virtual gallery where young people can create their own shows, either of their own work or of the work of other great artists from throughout history. So that's really amazing. And actually we're talking to quite a lot of museums who are interested in using this as part of their own educational outreach. So say, you know, the Tate, and you know, we're talking to people at the Hayward and places like that who they'd like to kind of create a version of their own gallery, and then ask young people to come in and essentially curate a show. So that's where we're at briefly. The website I will put down as well. It's the16.org, and there's loads of ways that we can actually, you know, we're looking for a lot of support. Obviously, it's a charity. We're trying to work on some sponsorship ideas, but obviously, you know, any kind of donational support, any suggestions that anyone has for people that I should be talking to or that our trustees should reach out to, I'd really appreciate any thoughts from anyone here. And we've got an auction next month. It's a fundraising auction, so we've got some big artists in there because Tracy Emin is a big patron, and we've got, you know, people like Isaac Julian and various others in there as well. So I'll keep you all updated on that. So that'll be towards the end of the month, just in time for Christmas. So yeah, thanks so much for giving me the time here, and it's been really inspirational listening to everyone.
Thank you, Lee. And so we're getting a lot of messages of people saying how they're touched, and I think that's the right word, right? We're all touched by all these stories. And I look at the work that Maria does. I look at the work that Sheikha Intisar does, that Alia does, that Together Band does. And the one thing that I also can't connect with in terms of the dots is children, and how we need to be able to affect change from the very source. And yet across the world, we're seeing the first thing that goes is art programs in school. It's anything that could actually connect and keep people out of these terrible loops they get rid of. So absolutely, we will do everything we can to support you. I've got a couple of ideas and we'll reach out to you. You know how much we love our conversations. And Maria, I mean, you're in the thick of it, quite literally. What other endeavors, what other path are there to be able to tackle this problem at the root, i.e. at the childhood, teenage, young adult life, to be able to create individuals that will impact and pay it forward, if you will?
You mean on the art scene front?
On the art scene front, or from what you've seen in your experience? Because I think once you go into philanthropy, you know, we heard about drama therapy, we heard about art, art not just as a way to connect, but as a means of expression. So in all your experience you've had, and heaven knows you've had a lot of experience with philanthropy, how do you think we can best connect the dots to give a voice to the younger generation?
Before I answer your question, I just need to say something about including everyone, because we touched upon a point which is a very sensitive one, and we said that people with certain limitations, because I do not wish to use words like, I'm going to use the word impairment. There are actually a few artists with physical impairments, and there are very successful ones. There's Yinka Shonibari, who is a brilliant artist who had even a sculpture on the 4th plinth a few years ago. There's Angela de la Cruz, there's Ryan Gander. So there are a lot of artists who have some form of physical impairments, but I think it's those with sensory limitations that do not have a voice. And I think because the world is moving towards inclusion now, and we've seen all the movements, the hashtag #MeToo, BLM. So hopefully we will be able to embrace each other's differences and give each other a chance to cohabit, but also to hear each other, and get rid of the old paradigms that separates people. That was just a little bracket, because I know a lot of artists who are very famous, and but we need more of those. We need more of those. In answer to your question, it's a very tricky one, but I would say, being the mother of 3 children, 2 at university and a young one at home, I would say expose the children to art. Sorry?
So I think we just had a little inclusion of somebody unmuted, sorry.
It's okay, that's fine. I would say expose your children to art, take them to museums, take them to exhibitions, and spend time talking about maybe one art piece, but in depth and in detail, and listen to their feedback and see what do they take from it, and what stories will they tell you about this piece, but also around it. And I think that it's the buildup of these little stories and those little exposures, because it's about continuous exposure, that will make their life even richer, and that will allow them one day to really benefit from those years of exposure, but also of knowledge, because at the end of the day, art is knowledge. And in the UK and in Europe, we have so many opportunities to expose our children to art. I mean, there's public art everywhere. There are so many musicals and theaters and so many museums. I mean, I cannot even keep up with the amount of shows that are on display. And I'm speaking about London. And I'm sure that everywhere else in the world, because I get emails all the time, and I think, oh my God, I wish I was there to be able to see this. And we also have social media, and we can look at things online. We've sadly lost books and magazines, but we have gained through the virtual image a lot more speed, accessibility, and so on and so forth. So, yeah.
To this point, sorry, Maria, I think we should do, unfortunately, a dear friend is not with us, creating a Netflix, but a cool Netflix for children of the art world. Because I think, today I was listening to a debate on the Squid, this terrible series that unfortunately my son, without me knowing, had seen it. So we were talking. So this is what we should do more, to have not so much violence. Unfortunately, through social medias, it's impossible not to have, but to bring more love and to bring more what you said. I think it's bringing children to a constant exposure of empathy and community and the beauty of art, whatever art they like at the end of the day. But you are very lucky. I think it's London is very accessible to everybody. To the you can actually, you are in front, or in Italy we are walking through beautiful monuments, but to get to a museum it's very difficult. They don't have this attraction to make it a bit more cool as we.
True. Yeah.
You have in London, which we can't wait to bring the children very soon to you. But you are you are not today. You are in somewhere else today. So you are
I'm in Dubai.
Yes, in Dubai. We should do more with the art in Dubai.
There's a lot to see even here. And I hope it kind of catches on to the rest of the world. But most countries now have museums and galleries and shows and public art, and it's a subject of debate and discourse. And
but thank you. I know we've been more than what we should have been, as usual. Our talks never end. We cannot end, but it's really an honor to have you all.
Always a pleasure, and it's nice to see Lee again, because we've had a conversation before. So how are you?
Good. Yeah, actually, I did want to, something you raised there, which was about access, and I just very quickly just wanted to make the point of, because London is absolutely wonderful, and I'm lucky enough that I grew up in well, very near London. I was in Surrey, so I was just 20 minutes down the road from Waterloo. A lot of the kids that we work with they're outside of those urban centres, and what's really interesting is how far that is. That kind of that 1 hour or an hour and a half outside of London might as well be 1,000 miles to some of these kids. They don't go to museums, and I think that's the real challenge, is giving that kind of feeling to young people who aren't immediately exposed like I was growing up. I could just go to the Tate whenever, and I ended up working there. Yeah, just giving that kind of access to kids who are just outside, they're not far geographically speaking, but kind of culturally speaking, it's a big distance. And I think that's a real challenge. I think that's what we tried to do with VOMA, by putting a museum in everyone's pocket. But yeah, there is that kind of that little leap that you have to make. We're trying to take groups of kids into London, and we're doing a couple of kind of behind the scenes things at Tate and the Royal Opera House and places like that to make it feel a little bit more real and less distant. But I think it's closing that gap.
Yeah,
it's a real challenge.
And you're absolutely rightly
just interrupted again, but
no, but you made a good point, and so did Maria. And I think it is wonderful when you can take your children to a museum and show them. Unfortunately, because of the perception of the art world for the longest time as being something that was very exclusive, I think for some parents, there's actually that disconnect that they can't even connect with their kids on the art level. So the good news is I had a great conversation with someone at one of the largest entertainment companies last night, and we're hoping to be able to actually put things like the VOMA and other experiences on platforms that are typically more for entertainment to actually make that connection, because ultimately it's about bringing it to those generations in a medium that they can digest. And whilst, Carolina was talking about the Squid Game this morning, and the whole debate was, well, in the 80s, everybody thought the video games were going to be terrible, etc. And they did have an impact. Let's not be wrong about it. Today, it's different because you have something like the Squid Games and you have TikTok. So now you have TikTokers taking Squid Games and creating TikTok challenges based on Squid Games. That's where it gets dangerous. And that's where we need to learn to either create, to either use existing networks to kind of flipping them around, to make them more accessible to younger generations in a medium that they can understand, that they're already using, and that they can connect with.
That's wonderful. I mean, that makes perfect sense to me. Yeah. I mean, that's how the internet came about, isn't it? They used a pre-existing network and just built what we have now as the internet. I think it makes perfect sense. I'd love to talk to you more about that, Francois. It sounds amazing.
You know me, I love to talk.
And scheme and have ideas. It's great.
And is there anybody else in the audience? We love input from our audience, and we see some wonderful people who are with us. Michael made some amazing contribution. I was so touched by your mother's story. I had no idea. I thought I knew everything about you, and here we are. Every time we talk with you, there's something else we find out. And so does anybody else have any questions or want to weigh in on how we can use art to impact? Sheila.
Hi. I was just going to say, art for us is a very, we love it, we know it, we're in it, but it's that word art, which will always have that sort of slightly highfalutin image. But children are all about visuals. And I would sometimes think that we should be using slightly different language. I always take my daughter to art galleries, and when she was tiny, I used to, just run in that room and tell me what you like. And she wasn't thinking of it as art. She was just thinking of a room with things on the wall that, mommy wanted to do with it. She didn't use those words. And I think we have to sort of, the creative industries, or even the word industry is too much, but just simply because, that's certainly in the UK. I'm more European, but in the UK, STEM subjects have taken over, and art and culture is considered just too highbrow, and it's never going to get you anywhere, certainly not work. So it just doesn't happen. If you want to study art, you've got to go to a private school. So that word art. So we've got to find something else that because children are by nature creative, and children have to be encouraged to use those skills, and that's why impaired children are often, if they're lucky enough to be in that situation, are encouraged to express themselves through drawing, because art is so just enough. But I don't know how we're going to change the language, but I've always thought that
it's clearly something that touches you very deeply. Why? I can see it on your face. It's something that's very personal.
Well, I mean, I'm also a trustee of the 16, so it is very important to me. And we talked earlier about art therapy, music therapy. My daughter's very interested in therapy in prisons, using drama therapy, having people locked up. Can you imagine the trauma of that? So to be able to work with other people and create something actually releases them from that load, whatever they've done or were suspected of doing, that has released them for an hour. So it's really important to give people these opportunities.
So with you, we're going to start a competition. Let's find a new word for art that people can connect with. Thank you so much. Omid raised his hands. Omid, please.
Hi, I just want to say hi. This is my first time to an art talk. It's amazing. It's amazing. Thank you, Carolina. And I'm a photographer. I live in LA, so
thank you.
That's amazing to hear about the great people. And actually, Maria talked about the inclusion. So I'm a disabled photographer, which I'm doing photography for 20 years. So thank you for all.
No, thank you, Omid. Actually, I contacted Omid because my daughter has cerebral palsy. So for me, it's very touching. And when I met Omid, my heart opened. So to see and to talk about so many things that he has done, beautiful pictures that he has done. So for me, it's very important, this talk. Thank you all for being here with us.
Yes, and I remember from listening to the conversation with Omid that Omid is actually in LA and has had his work looked at, and people from Hollywood saying what amazing work it is, and yet he has applied to, if I remember the number, thousands of jobs within that space, and yet kind of been skipped, which I think is very, very much what we're trying to change. And so thank you so much, everybody, for being here and for supporting it, being so supportive. And I think that if we all put our minds to it, we can make a huge impact, and that in itself is so damn beautiful.